So we've got this challenge of saying what we love about the Dharma in 5 minutes. So, so it's looking like everyone's back. So hello everybody, especially anyone I don't know very well. Hello to you. So what I love about the Dharma, well, interestingly, in a meeting last week, Singanada summed it up for me. He said, I love the Dharma, just by chance he was saying this, because it's very practical, and it's really cosmic, And I thought, yeah, that sums it up. So I thought I'd like to talk about it by looking at our picture of the Buddha. So if Mary could put the Buddha back up on the screen, we can, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the painting. Here he is, our lovely Buddha. And what I like about this painting is it kind of shows us those two aspects. So for me, the bottom part of the painting, the legs, the hands, it's very grounded. The Buddha's on the earth, he's there in nature, the grass is growing around him. Yeah, he's very embodied, he's very present, he's fully there, and he's in nature. And yeah, and then out of that, he's kind of rising up into rather a more mysterious place. So at the top, you can see his head isn't quite so clearly defined. It's a little bit sort of blurry, kind of. There's all these interesting swirls of colour kind of going around. So to me, that says that through his very grounded, embodied practice, he's gone into this very mysterious kind of cosmic state. And of course, when he then comes to share his experience with us, he gives us all these practical methods of doing that. He teaches us mindfulness and metta bhavana, ethics. And so if we do all those things and become embodied, follow the teachings, we can also access this mysterious state that seems to me, in the painting, it seems like it's showing he's gone beyond self and other. There aren't those like strong boundaries, they've kind of dissolved. And a special feature of our painting is that it's got this lovely aura going around it. You can see the yellow, the red, the white, the blue and the green. And this is especially for us in Bristol because we've got the strong connection with the 5 Buddha mandala. So this is another thing I love about Buddhism. There are all these rich images, lots of rich images. So those of us who like reading and talking, there's loads of that. But those of us who like just looking at images and letting those speak to us, well, there's loads of that as well. So what we've got in our image here, yeah, we've got these 5 wisdoms. So on the right, as I'm looking at the picture, we've got the dark green, mysterious Samoga Siddhi, the Buddha of the North, and his wisdom is about all-accomplishing wisdom. It's a bit mysterious. And then we've got the dark blue Akshobhya, who's the mirror-like wisdom, so reflecting back to us how things are. And he's also very grounded, he's touching the earth. And then over on the left-hand side, we've got the yellow wisdom of Ratnasambhava, and the red wisdom of Amitabha. So Ratnasambhava is about seeing what we've all got in common, what is the same amongst us. And Amitabha is about discriminating wisdom, our uniqueness, seeing what's unique about us all. And I thought these 2 wisdoms are especially relevant at the moment, perhaps, seeing what we've got in common and seeing our diversity and the richness in all that. And then at the centre of the mandala, or on the top of our picture, we've got the white Buddha. We've got the just losing my thought here. We've got Vairocana, the white Buddha, and the wisdom of the Dharma Dhatu, the wisdom of reality. So all the other wisdoms are kind of coming out of that like a rainbow in a way. So we've got this fabulous image. So we've got the practical at the bottom, the grounded, and we've got out of that the Buddha teaching the path that leads us into this cosmic realm. But as the Buddha said, don't take my word for it. Come and see for yourself. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Khemajoti. Spot on time-wise. And now I'm going to hand on to Naravira.
Thanks, Khemajoti. Well, I went a bit less cosmic, a bit more personal. Actually, I didn't write something to why I love the Dharma. I wrote why I practice the Dharma. Yeah, so I was thinking this on and off for a few days, and yesterday I had the thought it's almost impossible to describe why I practice the Dharma in 5 minutes, well, even in 5 days, I think, probably, but to do justice to the idea of Dharma. So I'll have a go, but yeah. So the word Dharma, could start with that. The word Dharma means path or teaching, but it also means truth. So you could talk about the Dharma as path or teaching or way that leads to truth, and in the Buddhist sense of truth, of knowing the nature of reality. Yeah, and it means a lot of things to a lot of different people, I suppose. Yeah, and for me, it's a connection that even kind of goes beyond my connection with Buddhism, I would say. Yeah, I mean, it's quite hard to sort of describe that, but you know, it's more than Buddhism. I suppose it stands out of a certain kind of awareness, or coming into awareness, that I think, you know, a lot of us have, and probably, you know, the fact that we're at the Buddhist Centre, we've come into that kind of awareness, a kind of waking up in life. Yeah, and I suppose that's what happened to me, and well, it's still happening to me, hopefully. So yeah, it's waking up to this sort of knowledge that I didn't have the whole picture, the whole story. I didn't even have I didn't even have a bit of a picture really about what the hell was going on in life. For me, it started quite young, when I was about sort of 16 or 17. And that experience was quite frightening and bewildering, actually. And no one else seemed to know what was going on either. You know, not my parents, not my teachers, not the society I was living in. So, you know, how could this be that no one knew what was really going on in life or with life? And why didn't they seem bothered that they didn't know? In fact, most often, you know, when I tried to kind of talk about that when I was younger, people just kind of groaned, I think, and you know, like they didn't enjoy the fact you were mentioning it, and reply things like, "Don't be silly, you know, you just need to get on with it." And you know, I think all the responses I saw around me were, I don't know. I mean, I suppose now I would see them as just being a kind of form of denial, really. You know, most people, or most of what goes down in life, I think it is a form of denial. We're in a state of denial about the true nature of things. And when we're brought close to it, we often freak out. But you know, this state of denial is also what's causing our suffering. Yeah, so I suppose that's where it started for me. That sort of a waking up. Yeah, I suppose, you know, I think about the Dharma as well, as a kind of commitment, or even a sort of desire, or even obsession, that goes beyond any kind of forms, really. And it's this commitment to try and find out what is going on here. So the Dharma, it's a bit like a mountain, really. It's the map of the territory. I like that. So the Buddha, left a map, or many other people left maps. On my version of the map, it also says, the map is not the territory. That's one of the first things it says. It also says that this map on this territory is constantly shifting. As you walk into it, the map unfolds. And it's a map of the mountain, but also it's a map, for me, it's a map away off the mountain. And this unfolding map, a bit like the one that appears in Harry Potter, where your footprints kind of, as the map unfolds and you see your footprints unfold. And it's that kind of map. It's not a very static kind of map. So yeah, and it's something you have to do yourself, which is something I love about it. Call me an individualist, but I do love that. And the Buddha said this himself, which is beyond tradition, beyond reports, logical thinking, not based on reason at all, quite mysterious. Not even what the teacher says it is all the time. But we need a map, and maps are useful, but we shouldn't hang on to them. So there we are. I hope I've said something about why I practice the Dharma, or maybe I've said nothing really, I don't know. That'll do from me.
Brilliant, Naravira. That's great. Thank you. Now I have to hand over to myself. So actually the idea for this session originated right in this shed where I was about 3 weeks ago, writing in one of these notebooks, which I write in early each morning when I do my morning writing, which is part of my practice. And I was thinking about something to do with the Dharma, and suddenly I found myself writing. This often happens. I find myself writing something that I haven't thought beforehand. I discover it in the process of writing it. And I wrote, what I love about the Dharma is that it's radical, it's uncompromising, and it's indestructible. And it had quite an effect on me writing those words. And it's had quite an effect on me thinking about saying them to you, because it's like, whoa, those are strong words. And in some ways, take the wrong end. Well, they say you get hold of the wrong end of the Dharma. It's like getting hold of the wrong end of a snake. And it's like, yeah, they could sound quite kind of hard and harsh, but actually it's radical, uncompromising, and indestructible in terms of clarity, in terms of love, and in terms of energy. It has these different dimensions. So I've always loved this word radical. It comes from radus, the Latin for root. We've got all these associations with what it is to be radical. And what it really means is that it's rooted. It's going back to the roots. And so the Dharma is rooted in the Buddha's actual experience. It's not a theory, it's not a philosophy. It's rooted in experience, it's rooted in reality, and it's roots out that suffering. So there's that radical rootedness. And what we need to do that is radical in the more conventional sense, yeah? So I suppose that leads me on to the second word, which is uncompromising. And I think it was a year or two back, I was reflecting on the Buddha and thinking, oh, what do I most appreciate about the Buddha? And I thought, oh, I really appreciate the fact that he didn't compromise. He just didn't give up. He was determined, and he just kept going because he really wanted to be free. He really wanted to find the end of suffering, and then he really wanted us to be able to follow him in that. And the Dharma is uncompromising. There's nothing that's fudged in the Dharma. To the extent, a bit like Naravira was saying, actually, ultimately the Dharma is self-critiquing. Another way of saying that is that the Dharma dispenses with itself ultimately. The image of the raft that the Buddha gave us, we need the Dharma as a raft to carry us away from carry us across the flood that is samsara. But actually, if we hang on to the raft, then actually we're going to create more dukkha. If we hold on to anything, we're going to create more dukkha. Holding to nothing whatever, as Vimati said, as we know so well from the Heart Sutra. So there's a way in which it's just without equal, utterly uncompromising in what it sets out to do. Yeah. And in that, it's also indestructible. The Dharma is indestructible because ultimately it's not an it. On a relative level, yeah, we need the mat, we need to relate to it. But again, anytime we try and really pin it down into a thing, we've moved away from its true nature, because the true Dharma's true nature cannot be discerned, and no one can be conscious of it as an object. That's what the Dharma Sutra says, yeah? No one can be conscious of it as an object. And it's not a side order. That was something else I wrote when I was making my notes this morning. It's not like the main meal's something else and you have the Dharma on the side. That's not it. The Dharma's it. It's radical, it's uncompromising, it's indestructible, and it's the main thing. The great matter, as it's often referred to. And now I'll hand over to Bhadra.
Thank you, Satyalila. Let's see if I can get myself onto the screen. Well, maybe it'll come up when I start to talk. It doesn't seem to want to come over to me. That's a bit peculiar. Anyway, I shall carry on. So what I love about the Dharma? Well, I've taken a slightly different approach in that I thought I'd just use a little bit of text, but the first thing to say about it is that I think the Dharma practice is actually trying to discover and trying to feel into what is it that wants to live through us? What is it that really is trying to manifest in our lives? What's trying to become embodied into form through our Dharma practice? And that really comes out from a small section of from the Heart Sutra. And I thought just to set it up, I'll just say what that is. And I'm going to read Konza's translation of the Heart Sutra. Therefore, O Sariputra, owing to a bodhisattva's indifference to any kind of personal attainment, and through his having relied on the perfection of wisdom, he dwells without thought coverings. He dwells without thought coverings. And in the absence of thought coverings, he has not been made to tremble and has overcome what can upset. So I'm just going to spend my few minutes looking at this in a bit of detail. So dwelling without thought coverings. I thought this actually goes back to what Naravira was talking about denial. So in a way one could say one's dwelling without denial. And thought coverings really is noticing when any views that we're holding on to are obscuring our connection or blocking flow, disturbing the manifestation of reality, disturbing reality manifesting through us. And we can feel this thought covering manifesting in our bodies just simply as tension. We know when we are gripping, when we are kind of forming a me and I around a view. There's a hot spot of energy becomes visible. And it might just be a word or a phrase, but we recognize that resistance when the thought covering is beginning to kind of control our flow. And the only way we can release from thought coverings is simply to let go. So I love the simplicity of Dharma practice. Primarily for me is simply letting go. I don't need to strive. I need to relax. I don't need to try to force something into being. I simply need to trust the flow of my life and the flow of something trying to live through me, and reconnect to that open ground of awareness. And the Heart Sutra really says, describes this process as a path. Describes that if, in the absence of thought coverings, we can't be made to tremble. And this seems really important. So when we let go of views of thought coverings, what happens is that we're letting go of our ego defenses. We're letting go of our mental constructs that are trying to protect us or hold us out from a fluid universe. We have to let go of the fantasies of how things are and try to just release into the reality of the moment. So I really love this about the Dharma, that actually we simply release our grip and just be curious. Lean into the raw, open, vulnerable faith in process and flow. Because when we aren't trembling, well, we're not separate from awareness, from open awareness. And this non-separation allows emptiness to condense into form. And this is a very important aspect of the Heart Sutra, that we are trying to live our life in a way that emptiness, shunyata, this aspect of wisdom can become embodied, can become condensed into life to be fruitful. So in this way, we arrive at, we have overcome what can be upset. And this really describes equanimity. So this fullness and integration of the whole of our being. Everything is visible, known. There's no parts of our being covered, obscured by thought coverings, which are blindly acting upon us. So we become like a perfect sphere on a flat surface, because we can respond and we can move in any direction with creativity. And we can be with the world in its pain and its beauty, and serve that which longs to become visible, without pushing, binding, forcing or freezing. And what wants to become visible is love. Really, the Dharma is serving love. That's why I love the Dharma. I want to be able to serve love.
Thank you, Bhadra.
Okay.
Beautiful note to end on and beautiful to end with the Heart Sutra. Yeah, thank you.